Mirror for guys. I know what you guys are going to be saying. This is not a classic mirror review. Well, you know what? Fuck it. I mean, I've been reviewing the Daniel Craig James Bond series, and I figured that, I have to review all of them, and the only reason I've been reviewing all of these is so I could review this movie. So honestly, if you guys don't think this is a classic mirror review, just shut up, watch this review, and then you can go on, because I'll do more classic mirror reviews after. But the only reason I'm watching these movies is so I can lead up to this movie, because I haven't gotten a chance to, I didn't get a chance to watch this last year. I wanted to watch it last year, and finally I've gotten a chance to watch it, and that is the final movie in the Daniel Craig Bond series, the 2016, not classic, but 2016 film Spectre. I've been wanting to see this for a very long time. That's the reason why I did this whole series in the first place, was so I could watch Spectre. And that's the main reason why I'm finally reviewing it. I was looking forward to Spectre, but I also wasn't looking forward to Spectre, and I'll tell you guys why. The trailers looked really good, but it just didn't look that, just spectacular. It just kind of looked average. It looked like it was kind of half-assing it. Just, the trailers in general, it sounded interesting, but it sounded a lot like Mission Impossible. It sounded like a very been there, done that plot. It didn't really sound like anything that great. I was expecting kind of just a okay Bond film, because even when this came out, it wasn't getting the best reviews. I heard, like, it wasn't as good as Skyfall, and I was like, okay, I'm worried I'm getting into another Quantum of Solace. I knew it was going to be as bad as that movie, but I was a bit worried about it, and, I definitely was worried, but after watching it, I have to say that even though Spectre, I don't think is as good as Casino Royale, or even as good as Skyfall, it's still a great movie. I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot better than all the critics are saying, and I'll talk about why. There are a lot of things I really did like about this movie. Let's get to the plot of Spectre, which the plot of this is pretty simple. Once again, you have James Bond. He basically, he goes rogue in Mexico City, basically, and he's suspended from MI6 in the very beginning of this movie. But basically, he learns that before M died, she sent him this one last message, basically, to go after this guy that he must meet, and he decides to go on this rogue mission, basically just to complete everything, so he can complete things, and just basically, basically just feel satisfied, I think, and just feel completion, basically. And that basically is, I think, the best way I can, basically give you the plot of Spectre. There's also a subplot going on that I'll talk about in a little bit, but that basically is the plot of Spectre, which I think the plot of this movie is really great. It's not the best plot of the James Bond movies, definitely will say. I think the plot for Skyfall still is the best plot they've had, definitely, but it's still a very good plot. I really did enjoy it, but let's get to the cast in this movie, because obviously the cast is something I definitely do want to talk about. So obviously, I think the one consistent thing about all these films, even Quantum of Solace, is Daniel Craig. I've said that he's so great, and by now he can do this performance in his sleep. I mean, he just really, I think, knows Bond so well, and he really just, I think, just embodies Bond so well. He's one of the best Bonds that we've ever had, and even though Daniel Craig said that he really was kind of tired of playing this character and wasn't really having fun with this film, it does not show, because it's kind of just part of his DNA. He's been playing this character for so long. I think he really understands the characterization of Bond. I mean, he, just like the other films, he's just as kind of, he's very dark. He very much is a get things done kind of guy, but he has a little bit of humor here as well. They definitely tried to put in a little more of the classic Bond here. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. I'll definitely get into that in a little bit, because there are a lot of things about him that don't exactly work, but Daniel Craig still does a great job. He really seems like he's having fun, even though he wasn't having fun, as he said in this movie. It seemed like he was having fun. I really think he did a great job, and he really was fantastic, and it definitely is going to be very hard to see someone else go after, him, because I don't really know. I mean, whoever replaces Bond after Daniel Craig, they have really big shoes to fill, and I don't really know if they're going to be able to be as good as Daniel Craig, because he definitely is one of the best Bonds we've ever had. He's absolutely fantastic. He's absolute perfection, and it's going to be very sad to see him go, because he really was fantastic, and I think either way, even if Daniel Craig does get another great role, which I'm sure he's done other great roles, like Girl with Dragon Tattoo, things like that, Bond will definitely be one of the best roles he's ever played by far. Léa Seydoux in this movie, I was a little bit worried about, to be honest with you guys, mainly because I was like, okay, we just have this random girl, what's she really gonna do? But I thought she was really good, definitely. I thought overall her character was definitely very interesting as Madeleine Swan, who I'm not gonna give away who her character is or anything like that, but I thought overall she did a very good job. I really did like her character overall. I thought she was a very good Bond girl. She was a bit of a badass at points. She definitely has some Vesper in her, which I really did like. I was kind of worried they were gonna go in the same direction as Vesper, and at some points they kind of do. Eventually these two kind of end up in a little bit of a romance, and I gotta say, I didn't believe it at first, but I thought their chemistry as the movie went on got better. At first I'm like, this is happening too quickly, but as the movie went on, I think it got really good. I think overall she did a really good job. You can really tell she really does care about James Bond, what he's doing, which I really did like her character overall. I thought she was really good. Is she a little bit like Vesper, where she questions him and doesn't really understand why he kills and things like that, but overall, I really liked her character. I thought she was really good. Their bonding was really well done, and she definitely was really great. I don't think she's one of the best Bond girls ever, but I think overall she did a very good job. I really like her character, and she did what she had to do here, and especially where she ends up at the end of this movie, which I'll talk about in the spoilers, I really was satisfied with what they did with their character. I thought overall she was really great. Now, a lot of people have been talking about Christoph Waltz in this movie and how he really doesn't have a ton of stuff to do, and I think it's a fair estimate that, yeah, the first two halves of this movie has nothing to do. The third act of this movie, oh no, he's basically like the star of the third act of the movie. He pretty much steals the show in every scene he's in. I think he's as good as Silva. The difference is that Silva's just, I think, a more memorable villain because he's in the movie so much more, and he's definitely, I won't say is the best Bond villain ever. Silva still is, I think, the best Bond villain I've seen. I mean, again, I've only seen the Daniel Craig movies, but out of the ones I've seen, he's really been the best villain. I think this villain is great. He really did a great job, and he very much challenged Bond. He really gets into his head. He really, he reveals a lot about his past. There's a big twist with this character that I didn't see coming at all, and I'll definitely get into that, but especially where they go with in the third act of the movie, I thought he was really great. There is a thing at the end of the movie that I just thought was a bit implausible, and I just thought was a little bit silly, definitely, they did, but overall, I thought he was really great. Obviously, Christoph Waltz, I don't think he can give a bad performance. I just don't think it's possible. He's one of the great actors that just can't give a bad performance. He really was great in this movie. For what he did, he really was great. I wish he was in a little bit more, but for what he did in the third act, really did make up for the lack of screen time he had in the first two acts of this movie. I thought overall he was really great, and he really did do a great job, definitely. And then as far as everyone else goes, I think the other characters, there's definitely a lot more for the other characters to do here, especially for Ralph Fiennes as M. I thought he was really good. There's a subplot going on with this character and this other guy, C, and I didn't exactly care about it, I gotta say. I didn't think it was bad necessarily. It's just, I didn't really see why we necessarily needed it. It just seemed like it was there just to give M something to do, because M had so much to do in Skyfall that it just seemed like they wanted to give him something more to do, because he had stuff to do in Skyfall, but obviously Judi Dench was M, and now he's M. They wanted to give him something more to do, which I thought was fine, but basically this guy C, he kind of wants to change things so things are not as violent and things are done through, like, surveillance, things like that, and I just didn't exactly care. I thought there was a bit too much exposition, just a bit too much spoken stuff. There's a pretty good fight at the end involving that subplot, but overall, I thought he did a good job. Ralph Fiennes was good, and Andrew Scott, who plays C, I thought was good as well, and then some of the other characters, like Moneypenny, she has a lot of stuff to do here, and Q as well. Ben Whishaw, guys, he just is awesome in this movie. He's a lot of fun to watch, and like I said, he really provides a lot of the humor in this movie. I thought he was a lot of fun to watch. I really did like what his character did here. And then Moneypenny, Naomi Harris, she had a lot of good stuff to do in Skyfall, but she has a lot to do here as well. I really did like her character. I thought overall everyone did a really good job. Just as usual, I think one of the best things they've done in all four of these films is the cast. They really do a very good job, except for Quantum of Solace, where they didn't really get the best cast for that. I think overall they've done a very good job with casting. I really like what they did, and I think overall everyone really did a great job. So the directing here, again, the directing is actually from the same director that did Skyfall. Sam Mendes did such a good job there that he did again for Spectre, and I think, again, he did a really good job here. I think he did fall in love a little too much with the classic Bond films, because I'm assuming that he went back and watched most of the Bond films, because I'm saying, if you are a Bond director, I don't think you should direct a Bond film and not have watched the other Bond films. You have to at least know the character of Bond. I think Sam Mendes, he tried to bring a lot of the classic stuff into this, and to a degree it works. Some of it doesn't. I think there's a little too much of trying to make this Bond more like the other Bonds, and some of it doesn't work. This Bond was always a lot darker. He was always kind of like he didn't really give a fuck about certain cliches. Like, there's a scene in this movie, we all remember the scene in Casino Royale where they ask Shaken Not Stirred, he says, "I don't give a damn," and here he says, "Shake Not Stirred," and it just felt like a retreading from Casino Royale. Casino Royale, I think, perfectly away all of these cliches, and this movie, a lot of them are back. There's like there's a cat in this movie. There's all kinds of different things. Then now I will say there are some good references to the other Bond films and classic things like that. I just don't really know if it need to be in this movie. I just don't really know if it belongs here, and especially for this character, it felt more like something that we should do for the other Bond. Like if they were to bring in a new Bond, do that. This Bond, I just don't really know if it belonged there, and I think the tone at times, it was a little messy at times. Sometimes it wanted to be really fun, sometimes it got really serious, and I don't think the tone was as balanced as the movie wanted to be. In fact, I will admit, the second act of this movie, I didn't think was the most interesting. The second act of this movie, I did kind of tune out a little bit, stuff that was going on there. The third act really hooked me in tremendously, and I really love what's going on there. First act was great, but once he goes to Rome in this movie, kind of goes in his investigation, I did think the movie started to drag on a little bit, but then when something happens towards the second act, then I really started to get into it, and I'll talk about that in the spoilers, but I just thought the directing here was a little bit messy. I wasn't as into it as I wanted to be, and I just thought, like I said, to me, it just felt a little bit messy, but the screenplay here I thought was definitely very interesting. I like they do the screenplay, especially just like Skyfall, they're going a lot more into Bond's past, what he went through, things that happened in his life, and things that happened before he was a 007 agent, and I thought overall that stuff was really interesting. I definitely really did enjoy it. Just like, I do think there was a bit of they couldn't really figure out at some points what this movie wanted to be, because it starts out kind of like a thriller, then it turns into something more psychological, then it's like a romantic movie, and I just don't think, like I said, it was as balanced as, say, Casino Royale, and also because this movie, again, just unlike Casino Royale, and unlike Casino Royale, and also like Skyfall, unlike Casino Royale, does not have that 3-act structure, and I honestly feel this movie might have benefited if it might have gone back to that 3-act structure. It works so well, Casino Royale. I kind of wanted that for this, and in some ways it does, but in some ways it doesn't, and I'll talk about that again in the spoilers. Some of that worked for me, some of it didn't. The screenplay overall I thought was very interesting. I definitely was into it. I just wasn't as into it as I would say, Skyfall or Casino Royale. I just didn't find the plot to be as gripping and as interesting as the other films were. The cinematography here, though, is incredible. The cinematography is great. It's actually the cinematographer that did Interstellar here, and he really did a tremendous job here. I mean, there are so many great action scenes in this movie. There's one scene in the snow. Holy shit. I mean, I was on the edge of my seat. There's this car chase that's incredible. I absolutely love that scene. There's just so many great scenes. The opening scene is like this tracking shot. I'm sure you guys have heard it before, but it's so cool. I love the way that was done. And also, let me just talk about the score to this movie, because to me, I think this movie has the single-handedly best opening credits of any James Bond movie we had. I mean, the opening credits of this movie, I think it's just a perfect collection of everything we've gotten from the first 3 movies. It has stuff, so many Easter eggs from the previous 3 movies in there, and you'll miss them all. If you watch it so many times, you'll miss them all if you don't watch it a few times back, which I actually watched that intro like 3 times just to see everything, but Vesper's in there, Lashif's in there. I mean, really everyone is in there, and that's something else that I think they did very well. I forgot to say that in the screenplay. I think the best thing they did in this movie is tying everything together, and I'll talk about how they do that, but they really do tie all 3 of the films together. Even though these movies are supposed to be somewhat separate, this one kind of goes against that. They tie all the films together, and I really thought that was really cool. I love the way that was done. That's definitely one of the best things I think that Spectre did, was really tie everything together. I really did enjoy that overall. The score here I thought overall was very interesting, and the song Writings on the Wall, at first, I've heard the song before. When I first heard it here, I'm like, I don't really know if that fits a Bond film, but as the movie goes on, it makes sense why that song is there. No, it's not supposed to be like a typical Bond song. It's supposed to be kind of like something else I'll get into in the spoilers, because honestly, I think Writings on the Wall is a lot more effective after you watch the movie. It's one of the few Bond films that it's more effective after you watch the movie versus before you watch the movie. I kind of feel like that's kind of how Writings on the Wall is, which I'll talk about, but the editing here I did think was a little bit choppy at points, I definitely will say. I did feel the length in this movie, but then towards the third act, I didn't feel it at all, but I did kind of feel the length at points, I definitely will say that. I believe it's the longest Bond movie we've had of the Craig films, 148 minutes, definitely quite long. It is, I believe, the longest one, but I definitely, that's basically all I definitely want to say. Now let's get into spoilers, just like I have for the other 3 Bond films. You guys have not seen Spectre, I am again into spoilers right now. I'll put the spoiler tag up. Once the spoiler thing goes away, then you guys can continue on to the review, but now let's get into spoilers. Okay, so there are far more amount of spoilers in this movie than I ever thought I was going to have to talk about. I mean, I went into this movie thinking this was going to be a really simple film. There wasn't going to be a lot to deal with, and there was a lot more to unpack in this movie than I thought because yes, there is a lot of stuff. Let me just talk about the nods at first to the first three films. Probably what I think one of the coolest things they did was bring Mr. White back. Why? Because Mr. White really just didn't serve much of a purpose in Quantum of Solace. Yes, he was there to talk about what he did, but he was literally in the film for like 2 scenes. And I talked about before in Quantum of Solace, when he was explaining his plan, it wasn't very clear what his motive was or what he really was trying to do, because the second that he explained it, a whole gunfight happened and it just kind of treaded away from story. And I think this really did save that. The fact that we meet him and he's kind of over it and he doesn't really want to be a part of it anymore, and his ending, it is very grim, but it feels like it's a very fitting end to his character. It kind of ends a lot of what was going on there. And Mr. White, I mean, since he was still out there, Quantum could very well come after him or something like that, or he could be betrayed again. And I thought they were going to do this really dumb twist when they brought in his daughter, that she was going to be like Vesper. That's what I was worried about. I was worried the second they introduced her, oh, she's going to be a double agent, she's going to be working for Quantum, she's going to be something like that. I'm glad they didn't go that direction, though, because I really thought that's what they were going to do. They were going to do an exact copy of Casino Royale. And I love that twist in Casino Royale. It's one of the best parts of Casino Royale for me. It's just, why do that twice? You know, I really thought they were going to do that twice, and I'm glad that they didn't. So I absolutely love what they ended up doing in the third act of this movie, which I just thought was incredible. Like I said, Christoph Waltz in the first two acts of this movie, it's kind of like Skyfall, where he's talked about a lot, you know what he's doing and everything, but you don't see him until a little bit later into the movie. But once they introduced his character, you could tell there's more going on with him. Of Ernest Stavro Blofeld, when he brings him in, he reveals a lot to James Bond, and there's so many things he reveals. For me, when the movie got great is when he's holding him hostage, when James Bond is just hold hostage, he can't do anything. It's very reminiscent of Casino Royale, what Le Chiffre did to Bond, where I also love the twist that every single one of the villains in these movies were all part of Spectre. I thought that was really cool the way that was done. The trailer didn't exactly make that clear. It just said that there was an organization called Spectre, and this did. I thought that was an incredible twist. I really love that, and I thought it was a very good way of tying all them together. It seems a little bit silly, but it works very well here, and I think they definitely did a very good job with that. But then the third act of this movie, I think, really did reveal what this movie was trying to do, because we meet this character of Ernest Stavro Blofeld, who we eventually find out is actually the father of the man that raised Bond, and I thought that was an incredible twist when we found that out. The fact that he, his father was part of that and everything. And also, if you guys don't know, Ernst Stavro Blofeld, most people will talk about, oh, we're back to the cat stroking. He actually started that. That's actually the villain that started the cat stroking thing. That's like where that's from. So that didn't bother me. I will say it's a little bit silly that they did that here. What didn't exactly work for me is when Bond was free from him, I thought that was going to be the end. I thought he had killed, and Blofeld, we found out, isn't actually his real name. His actual name is Franz Oberhauser, and, Oberhauser's the man that, of course, raised Bond after his parents died and everything, which I thought that was very subtly done. The little scene where he's being questioned by, Elise Sado's character by Swan, and she's asking him what happened to your parents, and he said, oh, my parents died, and something like that. Very subtle scene, but really is very effective. Now, we always knew that something happened to his parents, but I don't really think they said what happened till this movie, and I think it was a very effective scene because it really set up what the rest of this movie was going to be, which is really getting deeper into Bond's past. And once they killed Oberhauser, I thought he was dead. Once he came back, that kind of lessened the impact for me. I just thought it was a little bit silly what they did there, but I thought it was very well done, where before Swan had said, oh, I don't want any part of this, I don't really want to be on your side. Now, the second she said that, I'm like, she's working for Oberhauser, but that's not what happened. Oberhauser, in fact, captures her, and I didn't think this was as good as an ending as they could have done. The climax was as good as it could have been, but I do love him, I do love the choice of, do you want to save the world, or do you want to get the girl? Bond no longer gets to do both. He's either saving this building and saving all the people that's going to die in this building, or he's going to get the girl. He doesn't doesn't really get to make a choice anymore. And in the end, he decides to get the girl. You know, he's tired of doing this. He seems to have left the agency, and I love the way the movie ends, because honestly, I don't think they could have ended the movie better. I think the perfect ending is him finally being able to trust a girl again, finally being able to get the life he wanted with Vesper, with Swan. I think is a very good ending. You kind of get the sense these two are going to be together. They're probably going to get married, and this probably is going to be the girl for Bond. You know, after Vesper, he couldn't really trust a woman, but I think Swan really is the first woman he could trust. And like I said, at first when they did that, I didn't really believe it, because the storyline was supposed to be that he couldn't trust another woman, but I think just from seeing Swan and realizing how genuine she is, and realizing that she's not going to do anything to him, and that she really is innocent after all, even though who her father was, he can overall trust her, and I think that really showed that, okay, I am ready to make this move, and I thought overall it was a very well done scene. I really did like the way that was done, and I think overall it was a very good conclusion. And honestly, guys, to be honest with you, I think this should be the last James Bond movie for a while. I think, you know, maybe 10 years or so. I honestly think this is how long they should wait 10 years, then make another Bond film, because I really think this was a very fitting conclusion, and I really think after this, it's going to take them a while to find someone to fill the shoes of Daniel Craig, and honestly, whoever they introduce next, if they don't take their time, I honestly feel is they're not going to be able to live up to Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig was one of the best Bonds we ever had. He was dark. He really embodies everything you see in James Bond. He has that persona down. He has that just nature of Bond, and especially the scene where he finally screams, don't show that, where he's talking about Mr. White's suicide and everything. Bond never screams, and that's something I thought was really well done. With that I absolutely loved. But like I said, I'm really going to miss Daniel Craig as Bond. I think he really was a fantastic Bond. Sad to see him go. I understand he doesn't want to be doing these movies anymore. I get that. You know, when you do these movies for as long as he does, I believe he's doing it for like not over a decade, but I think like something like that. He's definitely been doing it for a while. I think like 8 or 9 years. But when you do it for that long and you have to, you know, eventually leave a franchise, I mean, when you do it for so long, yes, it does become a little bit tedious, and I get that he wanted to end it. And honestly, I think after 4 movies, that was the perfect way to end it. I really do think this was a good conclusion overall. Is it a perfect movie? No, but that's really all I have to say about the spoilers. I know I'm rambling right now, but let's get back into the movie. That's what I have to say about the spoilers, and now I'll give you guys my overall thoughts and my rating, and then, of course, I'll end the review. One last quick thing, guys, before I get to my rating, is that I forgot to talk about Writings on the Wall real quick. Like I said, I think Writings on the Wall is a lot more effective of a song after you watch this movie, because really what I think that song's about is Bond going into his past and realizing that if he risks it all, what he means by if I risk it all, if I finally make this decision to be with you, if I finally make the decision to be with you, if I finally make the decision to trust you, because Bond doesn't really trust women after what's happened with Vesper, and finally he's trusting Swan. He's deciding to go on this journey with Swan. Really, I think Writings on the Wall is kind of supposed to be Bond in his mind thinking, if I risk it all, could you break my fall? Are you really going to be the woman for me? Are you really going to be someone I can trust? Are you ever going to double cross me? And finally, he can with her. He finally can go on this journey with her. He finally can trust her again. And I really think that's what Writings on the Wall is all about. And I really do think that's a very fitting choice to do that. I mean, it's kind of surprising that that's what they decided to do, is kind of making an afterthought, but that's really what they did with Writings on the Wall. And yes, I've heard a lot of people say it's not really a Bond song. That's because I think it's more supposed to be the end of a Bond movie rather than the beginning of a Bond movie, which I honestly feel the song should have been at the end. I think they should have a different song from the beginning, but at the end, I think they did a very good job with that. I really did love that, and that's really what I think Writings on the Wall really is supposed to show. So that's really my initial thoughts on it. I know it's a bit of an analysis there, but honestly, you need to analyze that song a little bit. Just if you really listen to it, it really goes with the context at the end of the movie, and I really think it makes more sense if you, because in the beginning I listened to it, I'm like, I don't really know if this fits here, but at the end, if you watch it, it really does make sense as to why they put it at the end, where they did in the movie, and why it's even in this movie in the first place. I think that really, after you watch it, it'll make a lot more sense to you. So overall, guys, I enjoyed Spectre a lot more than I thought it was going to. I kind of expected an average Bond movie here. I got a lot more than I bargained for. Is it for everyone? I mean, no. I will say, if you're expecting something as good as Skyfall, you're gonna get that to a degree, but this definitely is a lot more of a personal film than it is, I think, a action film. It becomes a lot more personal. That's something I did like. I think the tone is a bit mixed, you know, a bit messed up at times, and it doesn't exactly go together. But overall, I am gonna give Spectre a 4.5 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. I overall really did enjoy this film a lot more than I thought it was going to. It does have some unnecessary scenes and unnecessary characters, especially Dave Bautista's character. I never talked about him. He doesn't really do much of anything except just kick Bond's ass every 5 seconds. There's this other girl that Bond gets close with who, yes, he's trying to obtain information out of. When you really think about it, she didn't really serve much of a purpose in the movie except get information out of her. That's really it. But overall, I think it's a very fitting conclusion to the Bond series. There is definitely going to be another one for Daniel Craig's last chapter. I think it's a very fitting conclusion. I think it's a very good way to end things, and definitely, I think is definitely, like I said, a very fitting conclusion, very good way to end things, and I think a perfect way to end the series overall. So that's it, guys. This is my review for Spectre. I've been very happy that I've been able to watch all 4 of these movies. I mean, they really are fantastic. Minus Quantum of Solace, I think they really are all fantastic. It's great that they became as good as they were. And like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens from Bond from here on out, because I don't know if we're going to see another Bond for a little bit. I think, honestly, they should take their time. I've heard reports about Idris Elba. I've heard the reports about Tom Hardy. And I don't know. I think they should probably wait a while. If anything, Taron Egerton, I think, could be a good Bond. I really saw what he did in Kingsman. I think he could be good there. I could kind of see Taron Egerton, but I honestly think they should just wait a while. I mean, Daniel Craig, they got so lucky with how great he was, and I believe he really wasn't that known of an actor. He did a movie, definitely, but he wasn't as known till he did the James Bond movies, and I think that really is what you need. You need an actor that's not as well known, and then cast him, and then see what he can do. I mean, for villains, a different story, but when you have the main character, you need to be someone that's not as well known, and I think that's something they did very well with James Bond, and I think that's something they really did get lucky with. But overall, guys, that's it for my reviews of the Bond series. It's not my end of classic movies, obviously. I'm going to continue classic movies. But let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Have seen, love to your thoughts. And I know this wasn't necessarily a classic movie review, but obviously it's a movie from last year, which, guys, I did change my ratings. If you guys want to check out my letterbox for 2015 movies, I added Spectre there. It's not in my top 10 or anything, or top 15, but it definitely is a really great movie that I definitely recommend you guys check out. But let me know what you guys thought of this movie. What do you think of the Daniel Craig movies overall? What's your favorite of the Daniel Craig movies? And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Girl Meets World, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.